So that idea of release is just that. It was just a word. Quite often, we remain attached to what we're purportedly releasing, right? Like we all have our expectations and opinions, and when you give that seemingly homeless person $5 because you want to give them $5, you know, do you say something like, "This is for food," or "Don't use this for drugs," or something like that? And if you do, even if you don't say it out loud, you're not giving any money. You're buying something. You're buying an assurance, because that's all it is. It's a, right? You're buying an assurance that they'll do what you want them to do because of your values and from where you are. It's not giving them $5. I mean, technically it is. You are giving them five, like the mathematics of it. But that's not what's happening. You're entering into a transaction whereby your values need to be followed, if not recognized and adopted and uh, worshipped or something. But that's really what you're doing, and we do it all the time. You give something to somebody, and then they're not using it right or enough, or they're not treating it the same way you would have treated it, and then you like try and interfere as if it's yours. You got to update this laptop. I gave it to you so you could do your schoolwork. You can't have a coffee next to your laptop. Do you know? Oh, you're saying it's my laptop, but you're still connected to it. So you didn't really give me anything. You offered in trade the physical possession of this thing so that you can enforce your preferences, your opinions, your prejudices. And maybe if they're unenforceable, you still get to feel bad about it or righteous about it or annoyed by how they do it or grateful when they do what you want or whatever. So that's what you bought. So when we're letting go, I didn't say let go and be sure stuff goes to the earth the way it's supposed to and maybe hurry it to get there and make sure it doesn't dilly dally. I just said release is one word, just release. I just said receive too. I didn't say um, discriminate and then receive what you want. I didn't say that. I just said receive. But that might not have been what you did, right? One of the things that we'll find in a practice like this is the things that we receive may not always be those things that we want. Sometimes they're what we need, but we don't really want. They may not often enough be what we want, or know we want, or are ready to admit that we need, or something like that. But it's it's much harder to plainly and openly receive. Like a flower petal. It doesn't get to decide if it's snowing or raining or sunny. It's just it's in the receiving shape. It's gonna get whatever the day brings. It could be an animal walking by peeing on it. It could be morning dew. I mean, it could be sand and dust. I don't, whatever it could be. A bird, a beetle. It doesn't really get to say, oh no, oh, let me just see what it's going to. No, no, thanks. That's not. It has avocado. No, I just, you know, like that's really practicing discernment, discrimination, preference, which is okay if somebody's offering you food and you can't eat and you have allergies or whatever, but it's not quite the practice of receive in this pure sense that I suggested it as. I call it xylem and phloem after the circulatory system of a tree. A tree lands, tree seed lands, I guess essentially randomly, right? It's pooped out or blown over or kicked or tumbles or washed or, it just ends up where it ends up. And I don't know how many seeds a tree drops in a year, like 65,000, 200,000, like it's a massive amount. And there's going to be on average one tree that matures from all that. But a lot of those, end up in a shaded spot or on top of a rock where they can't put down roots, or in poor soil, or something a little too pHy, or right in the middle of a trail that it's doing fine, but we kind of know it's not going to make it. It's right in the middle of a trail, uh, or right in the shade of another tree. And those trees do the same thing as the tree that ends up in this ideal spot, the perfect soil and moisture and light and all the rest of it. They all do the same thing. They just practice receiving. A lot of them don't get what they would have wished for soon enough, often enough, or they get something they don't want for sure, too much of, right? Or whatever. But they don't get to practice moving. They just practice receiving until they don't make it, or they do. That's what they do. If there's a deer out there, the deer's like, you know what, slim pickings. I'm gonna take a walk and see if I can find some food down the way, or some water, or less coyotes, or more sun, or animals practice discerning and discriminating and developing opinions and then basing their actions on them, saying not enough mates here, not enough food, too much sun, too much wind, whatever. And they just try their hand different places. Um, a plant doesn't. It's planted. It's just right there. But it doesn't say, "Oh, this is so shady. I'm just, I'm not gonna." No, it just does this. Maybe not as well, maybe not for as long, maybe not to maturity, but it still does treeness, just like every other tree. So, the practice is to release, not to go through and do the low hanging fruit of release or let go of what Steve would give you credit for releasing and you never liked, and so win win. It's just to release what isn't sitting here well. And the receiving is not to say,